Okay, now we're moving on to the Pantheon. Now, concrete, very important. Egyptians may have used it, but not to the extent certainly that the Romans did. And this may be the most important innovation that the Romans came up with. They had no local access to marble, and their stone was soft volcanic material. So, of course, they can't create anything massive out of stone. It won't withstand the weight. It was a mix of lime mortar, volcanic sand, and stone. They could add water, and the concrete could be molded, and it was fire resistant. How nice is that? They began first with simple techniques. They would have two brick walls and then just pour the mortar in. In addition of pozzolano is a reddish volcanic dust, and it created a strong waterproof mass. This was really helpful because then things could be set in damp conditions. And they also used a variety of stone aggregates, like stone that they would add in. Sels, which is a heavy lava stone, tufa, and pumice, which are lighter. And they also used recycled architectural sculptures in stone rubble. Now, the Pantheon. It was built under Hadrian when he was emperor, but on the temple, on the foundation, it has Agrippa's name. This was just the foundation that was left. He had his structure built in 80 CE, but it was destroyed. A second structure was then built by Domitian, but it was also destroyed. The third temple erected is the Pantheon, which still stands, but it honors the first building by keeping the inscription of Agrippa's original foundation. The temple is dedicated to all gods. That's why it means Pantheon. Pan means all, theo, religion. And the architecture is simple. It's just a hemispherical dome on a cylindrical base. The walls are like a drum, and the interior is a sphere. It's very open, and it has no central support. And you'll enter through a traditional Corinthian portico, like a patio, and has a colonnade. So when you have rows and rows of columns that you need to walk through, it's a colonnade. It has a pediment and a pitched roofline. Inside is a circular space. And of course, the dome is the only possible roof you can have for a circular space. And it was possible because the Romans had concrete. The dome is 142 feet in diameter. It was the largest structure in Europe prior to the 20th century. Before it, there was the treasury of Atreus. It was the only thing that was similar, but it was only 43 feet high. So you can imagine how massive this structure was. It is supported at base by walls of the main body of the temple. Curved lines are 20 feet thick, and as is the dome width, but it decreases to 6 feet thick at the pinnacle. The concrete mix included 5 different aggregates or stone, with the denser material at the bottom. You want the lighter materials at the top, and it is manipulated through coffers. A coffer is when you have a square, but you take some of the material out. So then you'll actually you're taking out some of the weight, which makes the dome easier to construct. And I'll give you an example of a coffer. So you see on the ceiling here how like you have these squares, but you take out the material here, so now that ceiling has less weight. And again, it says a coffer is a sunken panel. And you can see here on this dome, this is the dome we're talking about, how it has coffers going up. Again, so you don't have as much weight as you would if each square were solid. At the top of a dome is an oculus, which just means an opening, and it's 30 feet in diameter. The circular hole was the primary source of light. The niches are filled with sculptures of gods, and they would be considered Roman gods, and they'd be considered propaganda because these are our gods, these are important. But it also helped to cover up the modest-looking concrete. They did also use marble and bronze within. And here we go. Here's the oculus. So you can see all the light coming in. And here, this is the portico. It's like a patio. And you see how this is a colonnade. See all these rows of columns that one would have to walk through. This is going to be it's called a rotunda. A building's called a rotunda when it is round. Okay, so the loss and rediscovery of concrete. The Roman Empire collapses, and the concrete use of concrete is reduced. And by 400 CE, someone lost the recipe. No one else could figure it out. Seems kind of odd. The use picks up again in 14th century, but sporadically. And it doesn't really start taking hold until the Canal du Midi is constructed in 1670 in France. And in 1759, a British engineer, John Seton, used it to build the Eddystone Lighthouse in Devon, England. And again, modernizations were made to the recipe. Now we have something called Portland cement, which is still in use today. Joseph Asden came up with this in 1824. And now we have reinforced concrete in 1849 with Joseph Monnier. Renaissance. 14th to 16th century, the rebirth. Renaissance means rebirth. Now we have a re-emergence of classical ideals. Usually you think Western Europe, mainly Italy and the Netherlands. So you'll have you'll have Renaissance in Italy and the Northern Renaissance, that's the Netherlands. There is a shift in politics, art, and economics. It's called the Age of Discovery, though it should be Age of Rediscovery. Advances are made in technology, science, and physical exploration. Remember all these people traveling off over the seas to find new lands. Spain and Portugal were the major powers at that time. And they wanted to find routes to the East Indies. New navigational tools helps this. And there is more mapping done. And again, we have more advances in mechanics and metallurgy. So now artists are going to look back to those Greek and Roman sources. They rediscover the politics of that time, the literature, philosophy, and art. And there's a return to naturalism, back to humanity, to individuals. The medieval period had shifted away from these classical ideals and was very religious in nature. And then we have new tools: atmospheric perspective, linear perspective, oil paints. So oil paints in the Renaissance. Middle Ages, 375 to 1400. It's a time between classical and Renaissance. And it is sometimes referred to as the Dark Age. People, again, think of that because it was a time of war, famine, disease. This is when you had the Black Plague, so many people dying. But now to call it the Dark Ages is a bit of an insult. There were advances going on, but they were overshadowed by all the war and famine. It was rich in art, early Christian art. There were some Roman fragments. People started grouping together after the Roman Empire fell apart for protection. And this creates the feudal system. The feudal system led to what we now have as the European nations. And the major power at the time is the Latin Church. Monasteries were self-sufficient communities, and this is where art and learning thrived. Remember all the monks sitting around copying Bibles, doing the illustrated pages. Constantinople was the capital of the Byzantine Empire, and it followed Orthodox Christianity, and the split is still evident today. So when you think Byzantine Empire, think Orthodox Christianity. In the East, the church and state were united. And this is the Byzantine Empire. The Byzantine emperor was also a political leader and pope of the Orthodox Church. But this led to greater stability, which is why the Byzantine Empire would flourish. There's a transition. After the fall of Constantinople to the Muslim Turks in 1453, many Christians flee. They want to get out of there. And they bring with them knowledge. This inspires renewed investigation into ancient ideas and art. There is a sharp shift to present things realistically. So, gone were the flattened figures. The old art was very religious. Now they want to show actual figures in realistic landscapes. So, they start to relearn the techniques of the past. And again, emphasis is on the humanistic perspective, which was so valued in the Greek and Roman times. So, Renaissance humanism. Importance of humans, again, comes to the fore. They were now exposed to ancient thinkers, Thales of Miletus and Xenophanes, of Colophon. Yeah, you say that one. Okay, these were the first Greek scholars to take the human point of view, the humanist point of view, Thales and Xenophanes. The Italians, there was Plutarch, Coluccio Salutate, and Poggio Braccioloini, and they focus on grammar, rhetoric, history, poetry, and morals. Now, the standard practice for the Italian upper class in the 15th century and 16th centuries for knowledge spreads to Northern Europe. And this is when that they were studying these things, the grammar, the rhetoric, history, poetry, and morals. And if you look at those are basically your liberal arts. So these ideas spread to Northern Europe, and this begins the Protestant Reformation, because remember, again, we're going to start focusing on the individual. And in the medieval ages, it was difficult. Life was difficult, and it made people focus on religion. If life is so miserable here, it will be better in the afterworld. So they don't want to start thinking about themselves now at this moment because they were so miserable. But now the focus is moving towards humanism because life is getting a little easier. And they think about the value of a person. Religion's still important, but now they're going to focus on the personal religious experiences, how you feel about religion. There's a renewed interest in Jesus and the saints, and they are now going to start thinking about the human aspects of Jesus and the human aspects of the saints. In Northern versus Italian Renaissance, we're now going to have materialism. This is now going to open the door to baser thoughts, and because of capitalism. There was affluence in the North, and again, the North is Netherlands, France, Germany. Oil paint, very big in North. In Italian, painting is fresco or tempera, and they want accurate visual and compositional structure. Think about Protestant Reformation, October 31st, 1517. Interesting, it's on Halloween. Martin Luther with his 95 Theses, he nails them to the door of a church in Wittenberg, Germany, and he starts challenging church practices. He says that the church is corrupt and it needs to be simplified. The church must be purified, and that faith should be simple. There should be no rituals. It should be between man and God, not between man and another person and then God. So the church responds to this by, instead of simplifying it, by making it more ornate. So they challenge it with the reaffirmation at the Council of Trent. And in 1545 to 63, this is the advent of the Counter-Reformation. Now, while all this is happening, things are happening in Asia, Africa, and the Americas. They are developing. People start talking about Western exploration and, of course, the discovery of sub-Saharan Africa as if it didn't exist before. But there are resources there, particularly gold and ivory. And this causes people to go and exploit them. Trade expands. People, again, when you have trade, they are exposed to other cultures and other arts. Islamic art thrives. There is the introduction of paper. Woohoo! But as far as the Aztecs and the Incans go, not good for them. Because remember, Cortez comes over and pretty much wipes them out. And now this brings us to the Ghent altarpiece by Jan van Eyck. Oil paint starts in the Renaissance. Any paint includes a dried pigment, some kind of dried color, and a liquid material. The liquid material is the binder. Solvents and turpentine are added to manipulate the viscosity, make it thinner, make it thicker. Oil is used as a binder. Some oils were linseed, walnut, hemp seed, or poppy. And oil was also used in tempera and fresco. Tempera uses egg, and with tempera you get high color, sharp light effects, and a matte surface, kind of a flat surface. Fresco mixes into the paint or into the plaster. You mix the paint into the plaster and then put that on the wall. And fresco is durable. Now oil, it will take a longer drying time, but this is good because it allows you to rework. It has a thin layer of glaze, and you can have a careful building of high detail. It will have a hard, glossy surface. It will be rich in color and intense in light, and gives you the ability to create detail. It may have been used in classical Greece, but it was certainly widely used in the 15th century. And there was an idea that it was Jan van Eyck who innovated it, and he was certainly a master of it, but he was not the innovator. So we'll talk about the multi-panel altar. Most of the painting, when we're talking about these types of paintings, altar paintings, are done directly on a wall or a wooden panel. But here we're going to have a wooden panel. After that, then they were done on linen canvases, and of course frescoes were done in church. The paintings were done as decoration, and they become more elaborate over time. A single panel painting is the creation of a solid wooden form. So you take the wooden form, you're going to coat or top it with a mix of glue and resin, and then put down a thin layer of linen. This is called sizing it. Then you put on gesso, a binder, some chalk, and a white pigment to smooth it out. So now you have a smooth surface to paint on. Panel paintings can be done alone or in groups. If you have 2 panels, it's called a diptych. If you have 3 paintings, it's a triptych. And the Ghent altarpiece has many, so it's called a polyptych. And they are freestanding structures behind an altar. All right, Jan van Eyck, we're not sure when he was born. He died in 1441. He's from Maastricht in Belgium, not sure. And it is believed his parents were wealthy artists, but again, not sure. He had 2 brothers, Hubert and Lambert, and they were both very good painters. Not sure where he got his training. He did work in The Hague from 1422 to 1424 for John of Bavaria, who was the ruler of Holland. Then he worked for Duke Philip, the Good of Burgundy, and he also did diplomatic missions. He settles in Bruges and dies in 1441. He worked in the court and he worked for private patrons. He is skilled in oil, and he is known best for the altarpiece at Ghent, the portrait of a man in a red turban, and the Arnolfini portrait. He often signed his works, which is how we know they're him. He was buried in the Church of Saint Donation in Bruges, but it was destroyed during the French Revolution. And again, he is one of the Northern Renaissance best painters. And if you get a chance, you should really examine this particular piece. The details are amazing. The colors astound you. And in the back, it has a mirror, and he's painted their images in that mirror. And you can still, his ability to show light and have things shine, just amazing. So now we talk about the Ghent altarpiece. It is a masterful use of oil. It is an example of Northern Renaissance painting, And it is complex in its iconography. There are 21 movable panels. It's about the redemption of man. It is specific to Ghent because it is the center of wool production. And Ghent's patron saint is St. John the Baptist. And St. John the Baptist is often depicted with a lamb. And again, they would want to show the lamb here because Ghent is the center of wool production. So St. John the Baptist and the Lamb of Christ will be major symbols in this. And again, redemption of man, all about Christ being sacrificed to save mankind. It was commissioned by Jus Vide and his wife Elizabeth Borlut for a family chapel in St. Bavo's. Might be Bravo, I don't know. Anyway, it was also this couple also sponsored the chapel and ambulatory and liturgical equipment for the Mass. So they made this church and everything in it happen. Vide was a wealthy merchant. He was later mayor. And the Ghent altarpiece was dedicated by him on the day of his second son's baptism. The structure began around 1420. Hubert actually designed and painted much of it. He was very famous at the time. And remember, Hubert is Jan's brother, but he died in 1426. Jan has to take over the works in 1426, and he works on it from then until 1432, 6 years. There is a scepter held by Christ, and he's in the central interior panel. It took a month alone just to design this piece. Now remember, if you have a patron, you have to submit designs to the patron and before you paint anything. So the artist and the donor, the patron, have to work out all the iconography, all the panels, all the ideas, and then can the artist start on them. So these panels are adjustable. They can be viewed in open or closed panels. The exterior panels, which means the closed up, is visible during Lent and weekdays. When it's closed, it's 11 feet by 7.5 feet. Sundays and feast days it will open up and it's still 11 feet high, but now it's 15 feet wide, so it almost doubles. The inscriptions on it are in Latin, and this altarpiece is meant to educate. So there was a literate audience who would be looking at these pieces. It's poetic. The inscriptions rhyme. They have alliteration. And the outer panel says Hubert began the work, but the brother completed it. And again, this is intended to preserve the donor's name. Everyone wants it known that Hughes is the one who created it. Oh, take the potatoes out. And yeah, turn the oven off. That's Spencer cooking. I forgot. Okay. Now, when it's in the open position, I don't know, I put that there. Closed has 4 upper panels. On the left, you'll have the angel Gabriel kneeling to the Virgin Mary, and he will say, "Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee." And she says, "Behold, the handmaid of the Lord." And the words are upside down, so God can read it. And there's a dove over Mary's head, which is supposed to represent the Holy Spirit. Also purity. And other examples of purity are the lily and the white linen towel. Holy Trinity is represented from the 3 rays from the dove's halo. And there's a small window, 3-paneled window. And if you look through that window, behind it is a realistic scene of Ghent. You could see people out there. You can see just as it would look present day. So here it is. This gives you kind of an idea how massive this piece is. But this is open, this is not closed. Above, in the arched area, there are 4 panels. 2 male prophets, 2 female sibyls. Zacharias is on the left, and he points to an inscription. "Exult, rejoice greatly, daughter of Sion, behold the king cometh unto thee." Oi. Michael looks down, and says, "Out of thee shall he come forth, who is to be ruler of Israel." These are Old Testament prophets, and they were the ones who predicted Christ's ultimate redemption of the world. The Sibyls are female prophetesses from old days. Don't have Sibyls now. So it's a pagan counterpart. On the left, we have one saying, "Not offering human words, you are inspired by the divinity from high." And on the right, she says, "Your king is coming in human shape to rule through future ages." Now, the panels on the lower, the central, did I skip one? No. In the central one, it holds figures in gray. And these are sculptural objects, supposed to look like statues. St. John the Baptist on the left, with St. John the Evangelist on the right. John the Baptist carries a lamb in his left hand, and the Evangelist holds a cup with snakes. They're flanked by the portraits of the donors who kneel and pray. Jus Vide and Elizabeth Borlett are in full color, and this enables them to be present at church for all of eternity. But again, that would be when it is closed. So those are the things that we can't see because I couldn't get an example of it closed. All right. I lied. Here it is. Here it is closed. So this is going to be St. John the Baptist, whichever one's holding a lamb. St. John the Evangelist has the cup of snakes. And then here you'll have Jus and Elizabeth. Okay. And then the prophets, and above them, then the prophets up here, the Sibyls here, and through here, through the window, you would see Ghent. There's the white towel. There's the dove with a little halo. All right. Moving on. Oh, and if you want, you can go here, and it's Khan Academy, and they will, again, explain in more detail the Ghent altarpiece. The tones outside are muted. The tones inside are richer. The central, again, is Christ in glory, the ruler of the world. The name and go, I have no idea what that means. He wears a triple crown, and it has a scepter, because he is a king. There's a crown at his feet. He says King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is motionless, and he's blessing. This is God all-powerful in his divine majesty, the supreme, the best because of his loving kindness, the most open-handed provider because of his measureless generosity. John the Baptist, again, is left. This is John the Baptist, greater than man, equal to the angels, summarizer of the law, spreader of the scriptures, voice of the apostles, silence of the prophets, Lamb of the world, witness of the Lord. And the lower panels, this is where we have the adoration of the Lamb, the mystical Lamb. You see a landscape. Lamb is going to be on an altar, which is a symbol of sacrifice, of Christ's sacrifice. And of course, there is a blood from a wound, which is poured into a golden chalice. There is a dove over the Lamb, and angels around hold a cross and the crown of thorns, the items that were found during the crucifixion. The others carry censers, things that are used in a mass. And a fountain of life is placed in the foreground, which is the promise of eternal life. So let's take a look at this one. So there you have the Lamb up there. Here's the fountain of life. Here is Christ. There's John the Baptist. That, of course, would be Mary. And Adam and Eve here are on the far sides. Okay, let's see, where were we? There's a mass of people, all classes, even patron saint of Ghent, and popes. The landscape is to suggest Eden. There are temples and churches. The piece continues to be displayed in the cathedral today. There have been some changes. It was moved for security reasons to a main chapel. It once had a stone canopy, something that went over it, a baldachin, but that was lost. It once sat on a panel, a base known as predella, and the predella depicted hell, but that was lost before 1550. Another panel was stolen in 1934. It's gone. It had to be replaced with a replica. It's been a victim of poor cleaning processes. It was damaged by fire. It's been dismantled and moved, but yet is still in incredible condition. And if you want to get a closer look at it, again, go to this website. And this is where we will end.